Welcome to the Build with Boundaries podcast. My name is Manaz, and this podcast is for high achieving women looking to grow without sacrificing family and life. Discover what's missing and making you frustrated, and what's most important for you to achieve the success that you truly desire. All this without compromising the most important things in your life: your time, your family, your values, and your aspirations. So let's dive into today's topic.
Hi, and welcome to another episode on the Bulk of Boundaries podcast. My name's Manaz, and I am here to help you build your business and life with boundaries. So, today's episode is really exciting because it is number 100. 100 episodes. This is the 100th episode. I'm so excited. So, I thought the topic of conversation should be about boundaries because why not, right? It's not something I think, have done any recent ones for, so I felt calling to do something around this, and I think it would be a fantastic way to really start coming into February. This when this episode comes out, I think everybody is looking at 2025 and thinking, where has the time gone already? And if you are one of those people, then stay with me because I've got a lot to share with you. So, where I want to start with boundaries is that boundaries are very much connected to building confidence. And I think this aspect and perspective of it is such a lovely way to think about them. What can happen with boundaries is the difficulty is that we don't often see that we need to work on them. And when we have weak boundaries, what will happen is we can be feeling quite drained and perhaps even resentful of things that are going on. There can often be a lot of guilt, especially with us mums or women, or where you have lots of responsibilities and things. There are things that you will be saying yes to, but is it coming from a place of guilt because you can't say no? So, yeah, if you're feeling like you are perhaps overcommitting yourself, then stay with me for this episode because I have lots to share with you. Another thing that I see coming up quite a lot is where you make a decision and perhaps, going back to that yes, said yes to something, but then after a period of time, you feel resentful about it and you actually regret that you said yes. You've agreed to something and then it kind of becomes very difficult for you to backtrack and suddenly want to even give yourself that permission that you didn't need to say yes because it feels like it's too late. So, boundaries are here to protect us. They are here to help us. They are here to support us. They're a tool for us. Yet they can feel so difficult to either understand where we need to work on them or the ones that we have. Like perhaps we haven't even communicated them well enough. So everybody is literally walking all over them. And that's not necessarily their fault, or there's nothing in one place to blame, but when we don't set them in the way that completely is respectful of us and what we need, then they're never going to feel like there's something that you want to fully commit to. And if you're not fully committing to them, then well, nobody else will. So, going back to the yes, let's have a conversation about why we need to think about saying no differently. I think when we say no, we have to understand that it's not coming from a place of being selfish, which can often feel like it is. If we say no, well, it's nice to say yes. We've always grown up with those thoughts and ideas that being nice, it's good. So saying yes is good. And as women, we have caught on to this very, very young age. So this is what the problem is, that we have almost been conditioned most of our lives to feel that by saying no, we are being selfish. And that is not the case. And that is something that we have to not only recognize, but actually work on to change that, because we can't change it if we don't understand what it's actually doing for us just now. Because we can feel like we're afraid. There's this fear or feeling scared that other people think. And again, that selfishness, which I think we have to be coming at this from a different angle and understanding that we are being kind to ourselves when we're saying no. We want to be kind to other people, and we're always talking about what other people think about ourselves. And this is all coming from that saying yes, people pleasing. But what we're actually doing underneath that is undermining our own authenticity, our own self. And that can have a big kind of internal conflict. Like there's this resistance and there's this pretty nice feeling going on inside. And those thoughts are real. Some of them will be quite conscious to us, and some of them we might have got so used to them, we're on autopilot, and we let our subconscious talk to us about really just going in and jumping in and saying yes. So there isn't even a moment's pause. So let's reframe that. Saying no is an act of self-respect. So it's not being selfish. It is an act of self-respect. And that's so powerful, because when we think about it, we're always taught and learned through time and experience and life that, always be kind. And how much do we see that? But where are we applying it to ourselves? And when we do say no, then we're actually showing up fully for those things and for the people that we truly care about the most. Because then when we are respectful of ourselves, we don't have that inner battle, and it's like, how many people can we make happy? Well, to begin with, we have to start with ourselves, right? And by us saying yes all the time, we are not allowing for us to be who we are, or, have our needs met. And I want to share the analogy we all talk about, saying self-care with the kind of filling the cup analogy, but I want to give you something related to boundaries. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and boundaries help you refill your cup. So if you imagine that teacup and just really thinking about that those boundaries are there to help you. When you then create that pause and that respect and that honouring of what you need, which is your boundary, then you are allowing for that cup to get filled up before you rush away to go and help other people. And I'd love for you to take that away and think about that in your daily life when you're apply it to situations. Maybe perhaps think about, if you're a visual person, and you might think about this teapot and a cup and just think about that analogy. And that is in itself is going to create a little moment for you, a pause that allows you to then do some of the other things that I will be talking about in this episode. So let's move on. Next, I want to talk about self-worth. And I think in this crazy world, there's so much going on, too many things all at once. And we create this relationship between our boundaries and self-worth, sometimes, often, without knowing it. Because if you imagine if we have strong boundaries, clear boundaries, then that is going to have this effect on our self-worth, because we've had to already work on what we feel is worthy or valuable about ourselves in order for us to get to this point of having the strong boundaries. So it becomes a journey. It's like, having that boundary setting, understanding what you need, then being able to apply that, like understanding how it is going to help you, communicating it with the people that is most relevant to, because if nobody else knows that you have a boundary, it's not very helpful to keep it to yourself, because everybody will feel like they're walking all over it because it's not actually being shared. And then maintaining it and also reviewing it, because those boundaries don't stay the same forever. With everything that we go through, any changes that happen, whether that is actually in our environment, in our family, in our relationships, just with things, with business stuff, anything that's changing can often feel like what was working before is no longer working. So therefore then you need to have some sort of review as well. So when alternately, if it's a flip of this, when we have weak boundaries, they will be tied to having low confidence. Because when we're struggling to say no, we're struggling to put ourselves first. We're struggling to give ourselves the kindness and the compassion that we are happy to give to others. And when you don't feel that your needs are important enough and other people's needs are more important than you, not a good place to be, because again, going back to that analogy, we cannot pour from an empty cup. So, question for you is, do you ever overextend yourself because you feel this fear of being judged or rejected? So when we're overextending ourselves, it's that autopilot of saying yes. It's autopilot of jumping in and agreeing. And that's a question for you to reflect on, because I think it would be really helpful for you to have a moment to just think about that. But if you can, again, think about it differently, do something differently, if when we do change something and we look at something differently, we are changing our internal world. And when we change our internal world, what's beautiful is that goes along with changing our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs, our actions, and therefore what's outside of us will change too. People will perceive you in a different way. And that's so true in so many levels, and you will definitely have had that experience with different things, perhaps children, perhaps, things where you have been a little bit less detached, but able to see that. Setting your boundaries is like you are giving this signal out to other people that you value your time and your energy and your needs. So I think those three things are so important for us to recognize that, that the boundaries can be an incredible tool for us to protect those things. So, what do we need? How do we want to spend our time? And how are we using our energy? So looking at boundaries as being another form of self-care is important, because I think it's about time we thought boundaries were there to help us rather than create some imaginary resistance. And every time that you honor your boundary, try and recognize that, because that's such a beautiful gift, to actually be able to see what you're doing. And when you honor your boundaries, every time that you do that, recognize that you are actually reinforcing your self-worth. How beautiful is that? Again, this is then connected to that whole confidence piece. Recognizing where we need to focus is the first place that we need to begin. Where in life do we actually feel most drained or most resentful or most guilty? That's usually the place that we need to start working on our boundaries. So it could be that you are overcommitting yourself in your work. Overcommitting yourself in your work might actually have showing up in a different way for you. Like, it might mean that you are meant to finish at a certain time and you don't. You hang on and give yourself another, I haven't done this, and you need to pack that into your time. So therefore you overextend your working day. It could be family duties, that when you do things, then you are taking over and doing more than your fair share. Maybe you are doing more than is required. It's that yes again. And maybe you're also feeling this pressure underneath to actually not look like you are working or busy with other things, because you have to be available. Other things, available for people, available for things that might come up. And maybe that pressure isn't that noticeable to you day to day, but it's actually, working against you. How can we do this work? Because it's incredibly important, yet it's one of the last things that we think about doing. Even carving out, just simply putting aside 5 or 10 minutes. It's non-negotiable time, like it is happening, truly happening. And having that think about what it is that you need, because when we don't know what we need, we rush into doing mode very quickly. And I know I'm guilty of that. I know, many, many women are the same. And just creating some kind of time where you can focus on what it is that you need, because understand that's going to help you to make other decisions better. And another tip that I can give you is, when you have that situation where you feel like you've just jumped in and said yes, how about helping yourself to create a new message around that? It's not just because somebody asks a question that is a yes or a no, does not mean that you cannot answer by saying, let me get back to you, or I need to check my diary. I can come back to you and let you know. Let me have a think about it. Any of those things are going to create this pause. So this urgency that you feel that you need to answer the yes or no, it might not be right for you. Like, you may not know. And there's another thing that comes to mind is your human design, i.e. your specific design that you're born with at the time of your birth, can help you. Looking at that can help you to see how you are actually wired in terms of, when you make decisions, what's actually better for you to do. Some people are very good and will know in the moment whether they need to say yes or no. Now, other people don't, and it's never right for them to say yes or no in the moment. So, depending on your human design, there will be different nuances. It's not just as simple as you think about it or not. There are lots of layers. Some people are very emotional, and that adds to the kind of piece of the puzzle that we need to think about when we're making decisions. But ultimately, knowing what is actually better for you, because then you are making those decisions from a place of empowerment and knowing how to make those that will actually serve you. Because what we don't want is for you to make the decision and then feel like you're regretting that all the time. And if you are, then that's a sign to show that something isn't right here. Let's talk about guilt now, because I think this is another huge thing that comes up, especially for women, especially for mums, especially for someone who is multitasking, juggling all these variety of things. Do you feel bad for saying no? And perhaps you are saying no sometimes, but then what you do is you overcompensate because, you couldn't do one thing, so then you want it to be better by over giving in some way. It could be spending more on your children. It could be, saying yes to something ridiculous which you would never say yes to, but because you said no before, you felt like you had to say yes now. So this can really confuse people. Like if you're doing that with your children, for example, it's going to give them very mixed messages, isn't it? But it's something that we are tying to ourselves, and this guilt is taking over to make that decision, which again, we want to be making the decisions ourselves. We want to be empowered. We want to feel like we're making the decision that is right for us, that allows us to feel confident and feel like once we've made the decision, we can move on rather than going back to thinking about why we didn't make this decision or why we did that. Because then we're just living in the past. We're not even living in the moment. And it's very normal to feel this discomfort, this kind of guilt that comes up, and this and perhaps even fear. So it's okay to feel that, and it's not something to feel bad about. And when you feel like you're working on this and the guilt is coming up again, it's just showing you that you're trying to change something. So there's this resistance that's in the way, and like we talk about the comfort zone. When you push yourself outside, there can be a little bit of resistance. But are we going to then second guess ourselves and backtrack and then decide it's not right? Or are we going to move forward and continue taking that action that then means that the next time round it doesn't feel as bad because we're starting to normalize it? And having a little bit of a mindset shift is quite helpful at this stage as well, because when you say no to what is actually misaligned in effect because it's not right for you, you're actually allowing yourself to then say yes to what truly matters. And that's the whole point. We want to be saying yes to those things. When we start saying yes to everything, we don't have a filter. And when we don't have a filter, no wonder we feel overwhelmed. We're overthinking, we're procrastinating over things because everything just feels too much. Now, when I've worked with clients through their human design, it's been so helpful in helping them to see what their decision-making strategy is. When they understand how they're uniquely wired, when they understand what the process is for them, not a generic, this is how you can try this. It is like based on their personal design and their personal chart, their personal energy, their like what they bring to the world is very unique. And when we try to look at ourselves, when we're open to looking at ourselves in a different way, a way that we've never looked at ourselves before, because there's lots of parts of us that are hidden to us, that perhaps being hiding because they are so ingrained in us. They make us so unique, but we cannot see them because they are so natural to us that them being ingrained in us, we don't see that because it's just normal for us. And it isn't for other people, but therefore it makes us truly unique. So when you're constantly feeling this kind of overwhelm and overcommitting, that is something that can help you to guide you in where you are in not in alignment, and how to bring yourself back and what it means to be you, really truly what that means and how you are designed to operate and work. And those shifts are just crazy because when you look at things differently, then the things you look at completely change. And I've had a client who was constantly overwhelmed, overcommitting to everything. That whole jumping in we're talking about, totally, that was her. So much so that even on calls, when we had calls together and we're working through something, and her phone would ring and she would be compelled that she had to pick it up. Those are the kind of boundaries that sometimes we don't see that we don't have because it feels normal in our world. And it sometimes needs somebody else to really help you to see how you are spreading yourself out so thinly that it's just a matter of time where, you're going to reach this point where you just don't want to do things the way that you're doing them any longer. And once it's not an overnight change either, because, changing habits takes time. It takes a huge amount of effort and support because we're changing things that sometimes we've done for years. Sometimes they are things that we have done on autopilot. So they are so easy for us to do that it's almost like we find it easier to do that way more than thinking about it and even creating any changes, any pauses. And that's where the help, that's where when we work together, that support and having that, mentor guiding her in particular with anything that was coming up that was taking her off tangent, helping her to shift her perspective and think about things differently and seeing things in a different way. So when challenges come up in our life, or they can be small things, those small things even matter because we created these habits that we are falling into, this old way of doing things. And if they don't work for you, then something needs to change. So once this lady started working on like what it really meant for her and what she truly needed in terms of protecting herself, her time, her energy, that's when we started to see what boundaries she needed. Some boundaries were to do with work. Some boundaries were to do with what she does outside work. Some boundaries were to do with relationships, because they all have an impact on us. And, ultimately, if you want to have more time for loved ones, you want to show up in a way that you are confident at just being able to relax and enjoy those times as well, rather than feeling like you're on call all of the time, which is definitely how this lady felt. So, the small shifts in changing your boundaries and tweaking them, adding new ones, amending, like really looking at yourself differently, all of those add up, and including even decisions, which we talked about today, making those decisions, because when you say a yes, you've made a decision, but is it right for you to make a decision as quickly as that? And all these things then empower you to be more aligned with yourself and make all of those choices that you have, to make them in a different way. So I want to just cover what we have talked about today. This is so important for us women to think about boundaries differently. They're here to protect our energy. They are here to reflect our self-worth, and they are here to empower us to show up in a very authentic way. And again, with that authenticity, it's very easy to say, be authentic, be yourself. But knowing yourself first, and the tool that I use is human design, is invaluable. Like, it is really so incredibly powerful. And it still amazes me and fascinates me every time I look at a new chart and the person who's in front of me tells me how accurate what I have shared is with them. And when it is so accurate, it's easier for us to understand ourselves. And that is a lifelong thing, because we never really get that chance to work out what it is that we need. And this offers a different way of looking at us, and it invites us to celebrate who we are. It invites us to see all of our strengths as a strength and use them in a very positive way. So if you would like to explore boundaries further, then do take a look at my blog online. There's more resources there. And yeah, I would suggest that you definitely think about one area from today's episode on where do you want to improve, and just, take a tiny action on that today. I would love to know how this episode has resonated with you and what has come up for you. Has it been helpful for me to share this and to celebrate the 100th episode? I would love you to celebrate it with me by sharing this episode with somebody who it would help. They will thank you, and I will say a big thank you to you already. And let them know if it's been helpful for you, then I'm sure it will be helpful for them as well. So share the podcast, let them know about the Builders Boundaries podcast. I would really appreciate that. And do subscribe for future episodes and leave me a review. Let me know how you're getting on. I love to connect with people on socials. So I'm always on LinkedIn and Instagram, so feel free to find me there. And let's have a conversation and see where you're at. Always happy to meet you in that way. So that was the boundaries episode. I hope it's been helpful for you. Do take one tiny small action from this, because I would feel like it's been helpful for you. I want people to be able to take action with all the things that I share. And, sometimes just those tiny little things, tiny little adjustments can make such a massive difference. So I wish you well, and I will see you in the next episode.
This podcast is for you, so reach out and let me know what you thought about this episode. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, where I also share valuable content. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on your favourite podcasting platform so you never miss another episode. I can't wait for you to join me for the next episode of the Builders Boundaries podcast.